I think in our sort of modern society, we look at imagination and we kind of poo-poo it and say, no, that's something a child does and that sort of thing. But that's all part of this, hey, we want you to be at work at a certain time mentality. I think that imagination is actually really important. And that's one thing that is good about children's books. You actually want to promote that and be able to use it. And I think it's used for a variety of purposes. It's used to help understand people. It's used to look to the future. It's, you know, a certain amount of imagination is required to come up with a way to manipulate algebra. Like, oh, what if I put this number down here, or what if I do that? It's actually integral to what it means to be a human being, and I think we do ourselves a real disservice by saying, oh, this is something else, this is something separate, this is something that doesn't have value.
Yes. Well, you're right. There is a lot of manipulation that tries to just keep us being robots and drones and whatever. And they don't have much use for our creativity or imagination because they've already created the form and we are just there to stabilize it. So a person that is birthing new forms or helping new understandings manifest is not necessarily in a popular position.
Well, it's just funny to me because you have these corporations and they're not creative, and then they have what we call recreation. Like, oh, go on a vacation. We'll give you, this minimum amount of vacation, say, if you're even lucky enough to have that. Go travel if you can. Go do whatever. Go have fun. And at a certain level, that does sort of recreate you and give you ideas. And then, if you've got more energy, you come into work and you come to the meeting. Oh, I've got this great idea, this sort of thing. But
well, I think you bring up the point of nourishing and enriching environments. It is very difficult for the corporate structure to be an enriching and nourishing environment.
Right. They don't see it that way. They want
some of
short
them,
term. Well,
some of them
yeah.
are beginning to understand that they need to cultivate the whole person in order to have a quality relationship with that person. But most of them are only interested in one part of your being transported to wherever it is the work is going to be done and then removed at an appropriate time.
and they're very much about what they can measure. So
Not just about what they can measure, what they have already expected to become reality,
right.
And how they can manipulate so that becomes reality.
Yeah.
So that's not really we've all been there, done that. It's not very exciting, but it's something that we are definitely wasting a lot of human potential by participating in that scheme of things. And it's partly, again, because we do not know how to manage greed. We do not know how to reclaim our lives back from those people that are only looking to manipulate a small
So where does that come? Do you think that's like a fear reflex?
Well, belong.
There's a need to belong, and that's
There's a
greed related?
need to belong.
Huh.
And that need to belong is the easiest thing to manipulate.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You're talking more about consumer culture, and I've got to wear the latest clothes, and
Well, that stems from the very need to survive because we are pack animals to an extent.
okay.
And we can't survive in the nature of this planet without somebody helping us hunt that mammoth or that saber-toothed tiger. We need more than one guy to do that.
Right.
So there's a certain level of cooperation and teamwork and certain synergy that needed to happen. And that has not left our existence. And as part of the lessons on this planet is to learn how to work cooperatively. Because in order to work cooperatively, you have to use empathy. You have to use some of these finer qualities, because otherwise you can't create harmony, and without harmony, nothing can manifest.
Well, when you say greed, I'm thinking like Rolex watches in an age where no one needs to wear a watch, and fancy cars, and
All those material things that get created were just a trophy of human collaboration. Now, were they a trophy of slavery? You know, what level of collaboration did we actually have to come up with these things, and what level of manipulation did we have? But everything that is created on the material plane is a trophy. It's something that required more than one person to do. Even if you're an artist and you're painting on a canvas, you didn't make that paint. Even if you made that paint, you had to make it from somebody else that mined that stuff. I mean,
a writer, I didn't come up with the words.
Exactly.
I didn't come
or
up
the paper or the computer. So yeah, there's a collaboration that you are always a part of.
I heard something interesting. It was on one of these YouTubes. They were saying Picasso or Rembrandt or one of those abstract people, when they first came up with, maybe it was the Cubism, when they first came up with these new styles of painting, apparently there were like stampedes and riots. Like people went a little crazy because their brains just couldn't process it.
Yes.
And at some point you need to, it's almost like training the viewer on how to see.
Well, because when you take them out of the box, the first thing they're going to do is panic. I think Rembrandt was a Dutch painter who did more classical stuff. I think you may be referring to Picasso and some of the modernists that were challenging the box by doing this abstract, very...
like pointillism and these
yeah,
different things.
those definitely challenged the way people looked at things. And it humiliated those people who could not let their brains be flexible enough to actually see what the artist was trying to put out there.
Yeah.
Because clearly somebody saw what they were doing. And so if you go to a gallery or go to an exhibit and you're lost, you feel a little dumb. So it challenged people to broaden their understanding of perspective. Perspective is a big term, and it's one of those keys to interdimensionality. And so somebody who is very ingrained in a rut and going in one dimension, just plodding along, would be very, very threatened by someone who comes along who's got the keys to the kingdom. They can go to 9 different places, and now they're hopping over here and hopping over there and doing this and doing that, and they're not very well received or very well understood, unless they are able to form an affinity with that person that is in the rut, and they are able to empathetically raise their vibration so that they can then open some of the other channels, the other locks, the other levels of consciousness, so that they can bring them up a little bit at a time and into a more enlightened state.
I think you can get here from there. You just have to take it one step at a time. If you try to take too big a jump,
then fear overtakes your brain and short circuits your ability to travel. Fear is the thing that short circuits your ability to travel.
You just mean physically travel?
No, I mean travel mentally.
Okay.
I mean astral project or any of those other things. As soon as your body begins to create the chemicals that are the response to a fearful thought, you now begin to lose the tether that pulls you forward into other dimensions.
I see.
I hope that makes sense. There are some dimensions that you cannot get into if you are fearful. Just like there are dimensions you cannot get into if you are hateful. There are places you can't go with that luggage. That baggage just doesn't. You got to drop that at the door.
Gotcha.
Okay. So, and that's why it's important to do the work on your body and to do the breath work and to do the other things that gives you some level of governance over your hormones. A famous yogi that I worked with once said, you've got like 20 seconds from the time you react to something until your hormones completely take over your being. And if you don't redirect very well, then you're going to be stuck in that for like 20 minutes. That's something, and those aren't exactly
roughly,
things,
right?
But that's roughly what he said, and I really got that, because having been born Sicilian, half Irish with a little German in there, I definitely had a trigger. I mean, I definitely could be triggered. I definitely had the ability to become angry from time to time and to react strongly to things, and it wasn't pretty. And when I realized how important it was for me to not follow that genealogical predisposition, that was a big step in me being able to empower myself to stay on a level that kept me communicating with other realms.
Right. So you're basically able to put yourself in pretty much the world that you want to. If we look at it like, we live inside an emotional world, a social world, or whatever world. But if we're buffeted around and we feel like we're victims and, I have to react in anger, let's say.
Mm-hmm. You only have so much wattage to work with.
That's fair.
And so if you're going to focus all that wattage on where my keys went, you're not going to be learning some of the deeper mysteries of the world.
Okay.
Or the universe, I should say.
And I wanted to bring up, we talked about sort of shared experiences, and you may know I had quite a few shared experiences with certain persons where I'd be like, that's a very strange experience that I just had.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other person would bring it up. And that happened in a number of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So, when we're talking things like mystical experiences or maybe a spiritual experience or a dream or a vision, I think it's less important for, I don't know, you have the science worshippers and the atheists and those sorts of people. And on the internet we have the fact checkers that will tell you your perspective is wrong. But I don't know if your perspective is wrong. And it's certainly something real if you can have it independently verified from another person.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something.
Validation is a nice thing.
Well,
But a perspective cannot be wrong, first of all. A perspective is just a slice. If you slice into an apple,
Yep.
and then you turn it at an angle and you slice into an apple again, neither of those things are not apples. They're
Sure.
just sliced differently.
They're parts of apple.
They're all parts of the apple. So somebody that is looking to enforce a certain perspective as being the correct perspective is really trying to get you to align with their agenda.
Right, because it bothers them that you're not following the rules.
You're not following their rules. You're not depositing your money in their bank.
Gotcha.
If you're not doing that, you are wrong. Because going back to a fear-based mentality,
Right.
if we're all out on the saber-toothed tiger hunt and Joe is over in left field chasing butterflies, then somebody else is going to get eaten. Okay? So from Joe's perspective, that was a really pretty butterfly. And even it is true that was a beautiful butterfly. But from the other people's perspective, Joe let Tom get eaten by the saber-toothed tiger because he was appreciating the beauty of the butterfly.
Well,
That's where perspective becomes related to focus. And people need to manipulate your focus so that they can channel your energy. Perspective and focus. There's a very important relationship between perspective and focus. And when you say live and let live, that sounds really good.
Yeah.
But in order to do that, you have to accept that other person's perspective and their focus may not contribute to your agenda.
I think we've talked about the Aquarius age and how we're likely to have more but smaller sort of interwebs or connections of people. And I don't know if you'd want to call those tribes or what the best word is, but I think we have to go in that direction. And what we're seeing in the world generally is we're seeing imperialism, and we're seeing a mentality where people are getting into each other's business and demanding that they behave a certain way. I'll leave that a little bit vague, but the thing is, it's happening on small scales, it's happening on large scales, it's happening at the government level, it's happening with cultural battles, and I think...
Okay, now you're bringing up something that's very important. The relationship between illusion, time and space, and perspective. Okay? Your first beginning statement, you talked about the age of Aquarius.
Yep.
And of course, that is a reference to a time and space that has a characteristic because something has changed focus. And in this case, what has changed focus is for lack of a better word,
arrangement in space or in a chunk of the sky.
The lessons that the souls are going to learn in this time and space are going to be more focused in this direction.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, where people go that kind of leaves me wondering is that they say, well, we're developing these new networks and tiny clans and all those things have been around. We have families, we have had extended families, we've had religions, we've had all of these structures. The Age of Aquarius is not dismantling structures, okay? Because human beings cannot live without structure, okay? And it isn't even really changing the way those structures operate. The Piscean Age was very efficient in certain categories with getting roads built and getting things done, and some things in a productive framework were quite well accomplished during the Piscean Age. What is changing is the level of energy that people are bringing to whatever it is they are manifesting. That's what's changing. Okay, so the Piscean Age, of course, was the churning of the waters, the churning of the, you got the big fish in the ocean, you got the little fish getting eaten up, you've got the whole pecking order sort of thing going on. That's the Piscean Age. The Aquarian Age is an age that is ruled by the element air. And so it is less governed by interaction and conflict and struggle, less than the Piscean Age. It is more governed by the sharing of the resource of air. Now, all you have to do in order to share in the resource of air is to breathe in. Okay? And yes, you're going to fight with microorganisms in the air, and you're going to have flus, and you're going to have flu-related stuff, and you're going to have respiratory issues, because that is the beginning of a new age and the changing of the physiology of the humans in order to be able to deal with the new elemental energies that they are going to be processing for the next couple thousand years. So I just wanted to bring that up because sometimes people mistakenly think that because we're entering the age of Aquarius, we're now in free love and no structure zone. And I just wanted to kind of...
Well, that was the perspective from the 60s and 70s, right? But I think
Not
they were
necessarily.
there were groups of people that were promoting things like free love and suddenly an experimentation with drugs and various types of psychedelic music. And it's possible at least some of that was a projection. They're like, when we get to the next age, they'll see that we were right all along and everybody's going to be doing this.
Well, you're kind of familiar with the term nouveau riche, right? It's when the guy discovers oil on his property and now suddenly he's a wealthy millionaire and he doesn't know how to socialize amongst the other millionaires, and he does some socially inappropriate faux pas, and they go, the nouveau riche, right? They don't know how to behave, right? Well, you're entering a new age. The ambassadors of that age have to be willing to be open and receptive to the new structures that are coming around. And so they're kind of like the nouveau riche of that time frame. However, from a more timeless perspective, those swinging mentality things, all of those behaviors have existed in cultures from Bohemia backwards. It is not just the 60s. They related themselves to a behavior structure that happened at different time frames in different places, whether it was gypsies or Bohemians or cultures and tribes and all of those things. But those things, again, throughout the broad span of humanity, those behaviors have always existed. So it's a new marketing, a nouveau riche ego defense mechanism to be able to strengthen their position in a strangling sort of environment, an environment that wouldn't allow them or would cause them to be incarcerated for simply exploring things that shamans in other cultures would have explored. All of these feasts that they had, and Dionysus, was the god of wine, and now we have these feasts and we do orgies and we do all these things. I think wasn't any of this stuff was new to humanity. It's just that the behaviors resurfaced because those behaviors sometimes are correlated with people trying to have an ego death. In order to approach ego death, sometimes you have to test the limits of morality in order to not associate with those limits of morality and some of the other limits that keep you stuck in a smaller box.
And do you believe that the Aquarius age has more freely accessible information? Because one of the perspectives is that the Piscean is a lot about duality and secrets. And my feeling has been that we have all of these secrets that are bubbling up to the surface and are now fully available for everyone to see and hear. And I think that's part of what's going on. And
it all depends on at what point you flush the toilet.
All right.
Okay. There are always going to be secrets. There are always going to be secrets. The level of when you flush knowledge into the mainstream and how much you flush at one time will vary based upon what purposes it serves for people to have that information. Okay, so I don't think that the Aquarian age has more information available to it than the Piscean age. I think that it has a different level of sophistication.
Okay.
There are just as big secrets because there are just as many illiterate people that do not understand what the hell other people are talking about. Illiteracy is really the criminal here because I don't care how much you put that information out there, if people don't understand what the hell you're saying, they can't adapt it and use it to apply to their lives to change the way their direction of their life is going. You could print 5 million pamphlets and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You could broadcast it as much as you want unless you make the effort to educate people and to help free their mind to be able to absorb that information. I don't care how much you glut the airwaves with information.
Okay.
That brings us to literacy, which is a cause that I champion strongly.
Sure. And you don't mean it just in terms of reading it. You mean it in a more broad spectrum sort of life skill and mentality perspective, I would say.
I hate when you use the term life skills, and that hate is a strong word, but life skills implies that you are employable. Literacy and employability are definitely interrelated, and it's
life skills were for living.
Mm-hmm. Living skills is probably the more socially correct way of saying people that are from diverse or divergent mentalities being able to have the information in a digestible manner that improves their quality of life.
Okay.
Because, you can go into the Army and get life skills.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing. Everybody needs life skills, but you also need quality of life skills.
So what's a quality of life skill? How to enjoy yourself in a harmonious way? Or?
Well, certainly soft skills and interpersonal relationship skills are an essential element in having a quality of life. Another really big quality of life skill is being able to understand why other people don't understand you.
Okay.
So you have to have enough guidance and enough opportunity to explore yourself to understand who you are in relationship to other people so that you can responsibly bridge the gap between yourself and others. And that's why we have so many people that are homeless and so many people that have other, most of those soft skills are missing in those people. And I speak from 20 years of experience that they barely understand themselves well enough to have any perspective on why other people think they're a thief or why other people think they are a danger, or it's an entirely egocentric And the more illiterate you are, the more you tend to be egocentric. And the more you tend to be without a broader perspective. That's the crime. That's the great injustice to humanity, is that illiteracy robs them of their understanding of their place in a long lineage of humanity.
Okay.
It disempowers them, and it keeps them from understanding themselves as a human. And as a spiritual being as well.
Sure.
But, basically as a human, that's the first thing you got to deal with.
So that's quite a lot there.
We talked for an hour and 12 minutes.
Yeah. I think that's about all I really wanted to cover.
Yeah, that's good. That
Okay.
was a broad topic.